Alaska Real Estate Podcast starts right now. I'm Chris Story, your host for great adventures in real estate. Hey, today we've got Kevin Donnelly. He's going to check in from Washington, D.C. Becky Ann McConaughey's coming in from Juneau, and Patty Cohen swings by for a visit from Anchorage. What you need to know and when you need to know it here on Alaska Real Estate. Today's podcast brought to you in part by Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, with a mission to provide safe, affordable, and efficient housing for every Alaskan. AHFC really is your Alaskan partner in real estate. For all the details on the Energy Rebate Program, visit akrebate.com. Please welcome Kevin Donnelly.
My name is Kevin Donnelly. I'm the legislative representative, more commonly known as the lobbyist for Alaska on the federal legislative side. So I handle the Realtor legislative agenda on Capitol Hill, and I handle specifically business issues, which covers everything from healthcare to immigration to tech and data privacy. That's sort of my niche issues this Congress. But, you know, obviously NAR has a wide portfolio of issues moving at all times. So we have to keep our finger on the pulse on Capitol Hill, and I work closely with the Alaska delegation on a daily basis to advocate for your members back home. When
you say healthcare, do you mean like, say, provisions like the 3.8% tax in the Affordable Health Care Act? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So one issue that we're watching right now is the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. You know, that officially takes effect, or the main provisions of it take effect in January of 2014, and with that is the implementation of the 3.8% tax.
Do you think that's readily understood now? In other words, I've stopped seeing the emails and I've stopped getting the calls as a realtor. I've stopped getting the calls where people are relatively panicked that there's a transfer tax or that there's a tax on all home sales by 3.8%. Do you think it's more widely understood, and is that part of what you're attempting to do?
You know, I would certainly hope so. We have our hands full on a daily basis. We still get, you know, calls and emails, not just from our own membership with questions about how that 3.8% tax will impact home sales, but also from members of Congress who are constantly hearing from constituents. Mm-hmm. And it's something we've had to beat back. I mean, the fact is, you know, the vast majority of Americans will never be touched by that tax. It's one of the it's one of the biggest funding mechanisms for the Affordable Care Act, and something that we opposed when the bill passed, but it you know, became part of the law, and we've now tried to educate our membership about its implications and who will really be touched by it.
Because there's been a podcast or two on the NAR site, video cast actually, of I believe Linda Gould and possibly somebody else explaining the impacts and of the 3.8% and so forth. And I often wonder, does that get perceived as NAR's okay with it? Is there an official position? Well, you just said that NAR was opposed to it prior to passage, and now at this point almost into more of a explanatory role?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we did forcefully oppose it when the bill did, get enacted. Mm-hmm. We pushed back very hard. But it was a typical congressional dead of night drop-in on the bill. Mm-hmm. So we did our best, but we did lose that battle, and now it's up to us to try to make sure our members are comfortable and understand the rules of the new tax. And I would just ask that everybody go on to Realtor.org and educate themselves, and you know, certainly let us know if you have any questions. We have a great tax team who's here to answer any question you guys have.
Okay, that's terrific. Aside from the Affordable Health Care Act and so forth, what other hot-button issues are you working on regularly?
Yeah, last week we were joined by thousands of realtors here in Washington, D.C., many from Alaska. I spent quite a bit of time with your CEO and many members of the Alaska Association who spent time doing Hill visits, working the NAR policy committees. I know we were successful in securing some NAR funding for some Alaska-specific projects. So we had a very busy week down here, but more specifically to the federal legislative portfolio, the Alaska membership took to the Hill and met with each member of their delegation and had very good meetings where we laid out our agenda for 2013 and our priorities. And, to start, we are playing defense on protecting real estate tax benefits. And most of our membership in Alaska know that mortgage interest deduction is under attack largely just because of its price tag. But we made the case that, homeownership is not a loophole, and we need to do our best to protect that benefit because of what it does for, average Americans in making homeownership affordable. Second, on tax benefits, we fought to preserve the property tax deduction, the state and local property tax deduction, which is a critical tool for high-income states and high-cost states to be able to offset some of the cost of homeownership there. And then lastly was protecting the capital gains exclusion on the sale of your primary residence, up to $500,000 for a married couple. That was very well received. Those three pieces were very well received on Capitol Hill and certainly amongst the Alaska delegation. I mean, there's one great thing about your congressional leadership is that between Senator Murkowski, Senator Begich, and Congressman Young, we really are very well protected, and they understand the importance of those tax benefits to Alaska.
And you yourself, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, will be here in Alaska in the not-too-distant future.
Absolutely, yes. I am very much looking forward to coming up to Alaska with the help of Sandy and your state association. I will be touring much of the state and visiting some local boards. I'm going to be spending some time with Senator Begich while I'm up there. So really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great trip.
Your first trip up here, or you've been here before?
No, this is going to be my first trip. So I'm
Nice.
planning on taking a few days of personal leisure to go explore your great state, and then going to hit the road and do some travel for the Realtor business.
All right, Kevin, it's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule to be here on the podcast.
Absolutely. I look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Live from Juneau, here's Peggy Ann. Well, let's talk about your recent trip back to Washington, D.C. Anything that you think we here in Alaska ought to know about?
Well, I think first thing is we now have a 2014 first vice president. It's been a 3-year-long campaign. It was actually a campaign in which both candidates, Tim Helsel and Tom Salamone, had to really work and fight for it, and we had a board of directors vote, and Tom Salamone from Florida won by, get this, 7 votes.
Oh, wow.
So you could really see that every single national director vote counted. And that was very, very interesting. But it was also an interesting meeting because several things came through that I think people in Alaska would or should want to know. First, if somebody had a chance to participate in it, great. If you didn't, you can still get a sense of it, and that is that the Strategic Planning Committee of the National Association of Realtors put on what they called Rethink, a Rethink initiative.
Oh, yeah, I've been seeing stuff like that. Yeah, tell me about it.
It's really important, if people can go to rethinkthefuture.com, it has the results of what they culled from over 500 members who participated, or 5,000 members of the National Association participated in where in this world should the National Association of Realtors go? How should it change to meet what we have today and, more importantly, what we're going to have in the future? And it was fascinating. In fact, one of the things that came out of that is a call on the part of the members that we need to do something with Realtor.com. We need to make it competitive because for the first time, Realtor.com is not where it was for almost since its inception, which is the number one website with the number one hits, the number one go-to site where people are looking for a house, whether buy, rent, or sell.
Who are they losing out to, like Zillow or Trulia, one of those?
Exactly. Zillow and Trulia are the two top ones. And where they think that the problem is this whole aspect of, what's the word that they use? It's comprehensiveness, because they don't have the most comprehensive site. It's still the most visited, but it's not the most comprehensive. So what that made the leadership team and the board of directors do is we're going to have sometime in July a board of directors meeting to decide what we're going to do with Realtor.com as far as whether or not we're going to be able to get movement on the part of the board of directors and the leadership team to move it into what I would say a comprehensive approach. In other words, unleash it. Let it do what it's been trying to do for the past God knows how many years, to be competitive with Trulia, to be competitive with Zillow, and to really make its mark. That's going to be really exciting. So that's one thing people should watch for. That's coming in mid-July. Another thing I think was very interesting is the Professional Development Committee recommended, and it was passed, and I will tell you that it was passed by the board of directors. It was not what leadership team wanted, but what they have done is taken the requirements for the GRI, Graduate Realtor Institute designation, from a 90-hour program down to a 60-hour program. And the goal for this was to have the program be more realistic, given real estate practitioners' practice today. We don't have as much time. We need to get something and move on to the next, because the GRI designation is the gateway, if you will, into all the other designations, whether somebody is going to go residential, which would mean the CRS or CRB designations, that's Certified Residential Specialist or Certified Residential Broker, or if they're going to go to the CCIM, which is the commercial, or whatever it is the gateway to it. But making it 90 hours versus 60, they felt was really holding the program back. So that was changed. So I imagine every single state is going to be running around like Alaska is to get that GRI program retooled to pare it down to 60 hours. And I think a lot of our members, especially the newer ones, are going to really like that change.
Well, that's a great idea from the standpoint of reducing the barrier to entry, because then that very well could lead to the success of other designations you just talked about. And what's wrong with a more educated and more committed realtor group? Nothing.
Absolutely not. You know, it's kind of interesting if you watch what NER is doing. On the one hand, they established something called Realtor University, which allows all of us to take additional courses, in essence, get a master's or PhD in various aspects of real estate. That's great. That's fine. That takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. But they've also seen that the realtor corps out there needs more condensed education. They need to be able to get in, get out, and move on so that they can go out and be successful. So the move from a 90-hour program to a 60-hour program is fantastic, and the board of directors really made that clear to everybody that this is what they wanted, and they got that through.
All right. Well, what else is on the agenda that folks up here in Alaska ought to be watching?
Well, one of the good things is Dave Summers and Sandy Ehrman went to the State and Local Issues Mobilization Support Committee and got $32,500 for AAR to campaign for repeal of stream habitat protection ordinances that was passed in the Kenai Borough. The ordinance, as it's written, requires a 50-foot setback from all rivers, streams, and water bodies for the purpose supposedly of protecting fish spawning. But that, we feel, has gone above and beyond what is necessary to protect for fish spawning in streams, and it's gone off into something that inhibits private property rights. And so that's happened. No objection. In fact, they were very glad that the Alaska Association came to them and requested the money. So that was a no-brainer and a click of the fingers and off. We got $32,500 to get that going.
That's good news, yeah. Peggy Ann, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Take care.
Patty Cohn, what's up?
Well, I think some of the most interesting things that I learned about were some of the changes that NAR is making. They're getting much more involved in change, meaning getting more people involved in the association, making sure it's meaningful to all of our members. So lots of different ways to connect, and lots of new programs and products, and I guess more than anything, new ideas for our businesses. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Excellent. Now, Peggy Ann was telling me a little bit about the Rethink. Did you get involved or see anything to do with that?
Well, I did. In Portland, I was able to attend one of the Rethink initiatives, and it was actually very cool because they were saying, how do we keep our organization relevant to our members? What do we need to do? What's most interesting to you? Is it technology? Is it business practices? Is it information on how to build your business? What is it that you need us for? So the other part was, too, is I think NAR has always been, in my opinion, an association of people that have been moving up the ladder for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Now they seem to want the younger people, the people that haven't really been participating for whatever reason. So they are definitely really reaching out. That's what I saw with Rethink. It's a whole different way to organize our National Association of Realtors.
It's really smart. I mean, because you want to become, or I should say, stay relevant to the 1 point some odd million people out there and those that are coming in. So that's awesome. Glad to hear it. What else is going on? I mean, when you go to something like that back in Washington, D.C., is it a little overwhelming, or is it fairly well organized such that you kind of go knowing the mission and there's tasks before you? Describe the trip a little bit and what you go to accomplish.
Yeah, for me, part of it is, a large part of it is about RPAC, our Political Action Committee. I'm on the Participation Council, the Realtor Participation Council, and so one of my charges is throughout the state of Alaska to make sure every member understands that their dues don't go into our Political Action Committee fund. And that fund, actually, we use to elect people that are favorable towards the things that we need, legislation we need in our business. For instance, we were able to keep people's licensing fees down last session around. They are planning on looking at raising our fees again, and they know that we're standing by ready to fight them. In different areas throughout the state, people have different issues, but we're asking for each realtor member to pay their $15 minimum amount for their RPAC contribution. And so that's really one of my goals, and I meet with people in D.C. about how we're doing as a state, how we're doing at our individual boards across our state, as well as nationally. We've got some tough races nationally coming up. There's people that are always challenging what would be best for our business and actually homeowners' rights. So somebody's got to be there watching out for it.
Do you get new ideas when you go back and you're networking with others from around the country? Are you getting, and I imagine giving, some ideas?
Yes. What we do is we talk about, okay, what did you do for a fundraiser in your area? How did it work?
Mm-hmm.
Did you get people that you hadn't gotten before? I mean, you have ideas from, in Missouri, they do things with guns. They do gun raffles and things.
I like that.
In Maine and Utah, they're doing motorcycle rallies. Different places, they do like black tie events, so across the country. But usually you can find a couple that you go, oh, that might work here. And so then I try to bring those ideas back home to our RPAC trustees and say, hey, here's a list of things I learned about, anything that might work in your area. And then we kind of go from there.
I like that. That's great stuff. And tell me a little bit, while we're on the subject of RPAC, I know that there's 100% participation endeavor or goal afoot this year. Is that correct?
Our goal. Obviously, that's our goal. We're unfortunately at 49%, and North Dakota's at 50%.
Oh, that's not good.
That was this past week when we were in D.C. And my buddy Daryl there, it's hard for me to have to stand up and go, Daryl, you're beating me.
Mm-hmm.
I really want us, 100% is always difficult, but it is the right goal because everyone should be participating. And it is a choice. We're not taking the money out of your paycheck. We're asking you to consciously make a contribution towards your political action committee that helps fund those people that are, again, are friendly to our business.
I think you just hit, for me anyway, Patty, you just hit the nail on the head. Your political action committee, and that means something. It isn't random. It's 100%, to use your word, relevant to what it is that you do and what I do, and that what we do for the citizens of Alaska and through it our country. So thank you for all the effort that you put into it. I know it takes
anybody
time.
That's ever interested in RPAC or what we do or why we choose the people we do, I'm always happy to answer questions. And normally people start getting involved or maybe interested in RPAC is when there's an issue that's really flailing around in their neighborhood or whatever that's affecting them. All
right, Patty. Well, we're looking forward to it, and as we get closer to convention, we'll stay in touch with you and Janice.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. A big thanks to Alaska USA Title Agency for underwriting today's podcast. Closing the deal is just as important as writing the offer. Find out why so many people are turning to Crystal and her team of title and escrow experts all around Alaska for their transactions. Online at akusatitle.com, and Alaska USA Title Agency, they're open to close your business. Sandy Ehrenman's your executive producer. For all of us here at Alaska Real Estate, I'm Chris Story, wishing you health, wealth and prosperity.